Gentlemen, friends, colleagues, peers in the Australian cybersecurity industry, welcome to the presentation that I'm about to make today on the topic Resilience in New Normal and how the digital workplace is helping us overcome the barriers of time and geography. We are living in very interesting times, and since the first case of COVID was identified in Australia early January 25, we are almost nearing the end of this year, which has been one of the most tumultuous years, not only for Australia, the entire world. In Australia itself, we know we have had the unfortunate reality of having almost 20,000 people infected, almost 1,000 lives lost. The economy has taken a heavy toll, and in spite of the government's injecting significant stimulus package in terms of almost 200 billion Australian dollar, this is the first time recession Australia is facing in 30 years, with 13% unemployed, 10% underemployed. So these are rather challenging times. But the good thing is we human beings have always been resilient and adaptable to all the challenges we have faced in course of our evolution spanning thousands of years. So this will be no different. But the only difference is the digital age we are living in. And my job is to walk you through some of the immediate challenges we are facing in the workplace. And the way I intend to spend the next 30 minutes is spend about 70% of the time speaking to you directly, and the rest 30% sharing some of the insights from my other colleagues in the knowledge industry, which will complement some of the analysis and information that I intend to share with you. And without further ado, let me move to the presentation part. As you can see, I represent the Institute for Policy Advocacy Governance, IPAG, which is a think tank based out of Melbourne, Australia. And we have been working quite intently on the cybersecurity industry, and it's a pleasure and privilege for me to be joining you on this occasion. And the way I intend to run this presentation, I'll just quickly share with you. There are 7 parts, as you can clearly see in the screen, which is pretty self-explanatory. So as I go through the next 20-25 minutes, I will pick on each part. First, I'll start with the evolution, which I think is very important because this change in workplace is a constant change that has been happening since the very early stages of industrial revolution. So I'll start with a very small audio visual, which will give you a glimpse how we have been going through changes in the workplace till we have come to the place where we're standing today. So let's have a look, which will hopefully set the tone for the discussion that is supposed to follow.
The modern office emerged along with the Industrial Revolution, when people migrated to cities in search of work.
Factories required everybody to be together so they could take advantage of the powered machinery. That started to bring everybody into cities where they could work together and easily walk to the place where they were working. That in turn led to the growth of the offices to manage all those companies.
Early offices were organised into rows of desks for clerks, overseen by a central manager, mirroring the production line on the factory floor. And 200 years later, despite the rise of the internet, the basic function of the office persists.
We made the leap from seeing that people could communicate via electronic means, via email, via shared documents, without realizing that didn't mean that everybody had to be in the same place.
You've got mail.
We've had 20 odd years since the internet, and office design is really only starting to reflect the real possibilities of that change.
The uncomfortable truth about offices is that they are expensive and inefficient. Companies spend on average $10,000 on office space per employee every year. The most expensive office real estate is in Hong Kong, where every square foot costs on average $265 per year. Beijing and London are the next most expensive locations. The idea of workers clocking in and out at the same time every day also dates back to the Industrial Revolution. Before that, people were paid based on how much they made, rather than the amount of time they spent at work. And if the office ceases to be the centre of working life, the idea of working set hours, or the 9 to 5, will become less meaningful.
We may well work on a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon if that's more convenient for us. We're shifting back again to people being paid for their function and not for the time they turn up.
So thanks to our friends and economists, through their courtesy, I could share this video with you. As you could see, we are coming back to the fundamental truth. That is, how much we get paid is not necessarily how much time we spend, it's more to productivity. And that's the sphere we're moving back again. Now, as I alluded in my initial remarks, the things I'm gonna help you go through in this presentation. First is how this COVID has impacted our work life. Now, one of the things which has come into surface is the importance of communication. In a normal average work day, we would have gone to office, had the social interaction, those human interface, which is now almost at an all-time low because of the frequent lockdowns. So which means our inability to communicate at times have taken a toll on us. On the other hand, working at home has its own challenges because at times it may apparently look like working from home can be more comfortable. But what in reality happens, the line between work and time spent with family gets blurred. And at times we end up actually working more at home than at office. And what we have seen in many cases, people are spending more time in chats, like in case of Microsoft's team have seen the chats gone up more than 100-200% in the weekends, which would not have been the case had there been normal office, which obviously ultimately leads to effect on mental health. And this is becoming alarmingly a new challenge in the new workplace. Moving on, what kind of changes are taking place? Obviously, technology is in the driving seat. And one of the things that's happening, this whole virtual space, virtual meetings is becoming an everyday, regular part of our life. And this has led to very quick adaptation of automation technology, because even before COVID started, fourth industrial revolution was knocking at the door. COVID has expedited this whole spectrum of digital space, FIR, virtual space, and accompanying that is also many other corresponding issues like security. For example, 1 out of 10 employees have had their video calls hacked. So when you have so much traffic navigating in the digital space, obviously it has these accompanying risks, to which we are going to talk about in the later part of the presentation. Industries. Now, like any other crisis, there are some winners, there are some losers. As you can fairly imagine, some of the outright winners are tech industry, cybersecurity players. Companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon have thrived. In Amazon's case, their profit have soared 40%. E-commerce, which was in any case slowly gaining momentum, has been on a fast track mode because of COVID and almost brought forward by almost 5 years. Health sector, of course, is another area, but I wouldn't just identify it's a new expanding horizon, because currently we know many of the governments, even as we speak, in Europe and other parts of the world, are struggling responding to the health demand, and there is current lockdown. But ultimately, in the longer haul, health sector will get a big boost because of the pandemic the entire world has been facing. Now, big time loser, hospitality and tourism, which obviously most of us in a normal time used to travel quite a bit, and travel has come down significantly. And as expected, the tourism industry has taken a heavy toll, more than 50% dip in their revenue and profit. Many people have lost jobs. Similarly, foods and restaurants, which are very ancillary industries, taken a toll. Food shop, restaurant, bars have been mostly closed or opened very scantily during in-between lockdown periods. Then education sector, in spite of all digital tools and e-learning, but also reality, campus learning has taken a heavy toll, and we have seen many universities, education institutes have a significant portion of academicians sort of laid off. And for many low-income countries which are resource constrained, do not have that kind of technological platform, learning and schooling has taken a very heavy toll during this time, with many schools shut down and many governments struggling how to salvage this generation which has been out of school for almost a year. Now, what's happening in Australia? Some of the things I have shared within my initial remarks. Other than that, workplace transformation is happening significantly. Majority of the Australians are embracing the new reality of the combination of work from home and work in the normal regular office space. Mental health, more than 60% people have reported having issues. Government is trying to reformulate new laws to deal with the new working environment, workspace. So we will see a lot of change coming in the coming months and years. Now, the new frontier, the digital workplace. What is happening, as I just mentioned, we are on a fast track to digital adaptation, and most of the managers realize, adoption to digital tools and virtual space is no longer an alternative or option, is a must. And what is also happening, working from remotely, a significant portion of labor force is transforming. And in many companies, particularly tech companies, have already declared that many of their employees do not have to come to work at all, or at least until somewhere end of 2021. So all this needs a new framework in terms of how we employ, how we pay employees, and how do we make it sustainable. For example, moving forward, it's highly unlikely many of the organizations might have full-time rental office space. It may be a combination of 3 days work at home, 2 days work at office. That office can be a fully furnished studio kind of stuff, much less cost, more flexible. So a lot of things will even happen in the post-COVID scenario. Now, next is a digital framework. When I say digital framework, it fundamentally has 4 pillars, which you can see in the screen. And I'll go one by one. First is the communication collaboration, which I have already said is very vital, because in a time when you're physically isolated and communication and coordination is more distant, this becomes a vital piece to maintain that on a more regular basis. And to do that, what is of utmost importance, either on an individual or institutional basis, every unit are adopting those digital tools which is particularly suited to meet their own communication needs. There is no cookie cutter approach. Similarly, because of the heightened traffic that's happening, individual, SMEs, corporates, there needs to be more compliance and legal issues in the cyberspace just to make sure critical issues like data privacy, the users' information which are in the social media, these are correctly protected, so on and so forth. So all this combined to the last pillar, which is value addition and business drivers. So one of the key challenges driving forward as we use the digital space to overcome this period of pandemic, how in spite the challenges, managers add value to the product and services they're selling, and how that leads to the post-COVID period so there is a continuity. Why go digital? I think some of this answer is already out there. You make cost savings. You don't have to have full-time big office rentals. Then of course your productivity in many cases goes up because you're spending less time on commute, and it's also environment friendly because you have less means of communication, transportation in the roads or railways. And as you may have seen in many instances, we have seen many wildlife coming out of the forest coming to the street because there are less people. So all this means we have to have more flexible modules in the workplace in the days ahead, so that post-COVID, we make a smart combination shift between working from home and working in the place we have traditionally called office. Why go digital? That I've explained. Now, this transition is also fraught with challenges, as you will see in the next couple of minutes.
Tech companies are leading the charge towards remote working. Twitter has already said its staff need never come back to the office if they don't want to. And Facebook says half its staff could be working remotely in a decade. These types of high-skill, highly paid roles have a disproportionate impact on the economy. They are known as knowledge jobs, and where they are physically located is important, as they support entire ecosystems of other jobs around them.
For every knowledge job, there's 5 other jobs that are dependent on that job. Some of these are very highly skilled, like lawyers and doctors, but most of them are lower skilled jobs like baristas, yoga instructors, and other sort of urban services. Once you add up the spillovers that they contribute, the majority of Americans are employed in a way that means that they're dependent on knowledge jobs.
Although it's impossible to know exactly how many other roles are supported by these so-called knowledge jobs, if they were to become remote positions, it would have a profound impact on the jobs they support in the wider economy. But this isn't a one-way street. knowledge jobs are such powerful drivers of the economy because they are usually based in cities.
The reason that knowledge jobs tend to be located in cities is because they depend very heavily on these agglomeration effects. So when you put lots of people very closely together, they become much, much more productive. So Americans living in agglomerations with more than 1 million people are more than 50% more productive than ones living in metros with smaller populations. The question for knowledge workers is whether you can replicate those productivity benefits with a looser relationship to a city or sort of no relationship to a city.
So, moving to the next part, women have, in this particular instance, as you may have seen in many of the articles and analysis that come up, and many, unfortunately, in the receiving end of having to manage both household works, and in particular instances we have had dual career couples. Unfortunately, the surveys show women have taken most of the brunt of managing this balance between household chores and taking care of the children, their schooling, also doing their work. Let's see, and of course, just to emphasize, this is not something very unique happening today. It has had some historical perspective. Let's have a look.
Work from home revolution is having a particularly pronounced effect on some groups within the workforce. Women are more likely to work in face-to-face roles, and so they have been disproportionately affected by the recession caused by COVID-19. In previous recessions, men have generally been more likely to be laid off, as they are overrepresented in manufacturing and construction. This time around, more women in America have lost their jobs. And those who've kept their jobs have extra challenges. Mothers are now interrupted over 50% more often than fathers. But the normalization of home working during the pandemic could also have long-term benefits for some female workers.
If remote work becomes this way of working that has no stigma attached to it, then I think that requirement that you drop everything and be in the office all the time for these sort of very high-powered careers will sort of slacken slightly. And I think that it might be a good thing for women to sort of help them break through.
So there is a serious gender dimension to this challenge that we face. Now, looking into some of the digital tools, most of you are familiar with this, but just let's take a quick shot. We have Office 365, G Suite, which is helping us boost productivity. We have Trello and Asana, which is helping so project and workflow management. We have Remo and Airmeet handling the virtual conference, of course, Zoom, WebEx, so on and so forth. So these, a lot of tools are available out there to make life a little easier for us. And this part, which sort of encompasses the essential tools, if you have a look at the slide which has been put in front of you, the synchronous and asynchronous communication, the information security, then the sort of startup checks, group thinking, project management, information management. As you read the sub-points, let me just connect the dotted line. The bottom line is, if you are an information receiver or sender, what is very important for you, primarily you ask three questions. Number one, who is the recipient of your information and communication? And number two, what exactly you're trying to achieve? Number three, what is the most apt digital tool? These two more or less are answered well if you're paying attention to all these subcomponents that I have outlined in the major 7 building blocks of today's workplace communication tools. Moving on. Adapting to the new change. As I mentioned, leadership in changing time is always challenging. And in these challenging times, to maintain a transparent communication with employees who are insecure, who don't know where there'll be a job in the next week, next month, is very critical. So what means more informal communication has to take in place at a time where formal communication, unfortunately, are coming down because inability of people to go to their normal workplaces. So one of the key issues for managers in the new workplace is not only to adapt to the automation, digital transformation, but no less important, if not more important, how to deal with the mental health issues that has been building up slowly during this time. So dealing with workplace challenges during pandemic, how do we adapt to new changes? Let's have a look.
Burnout has been an issue in the workplace for decades. But in the digital age, there's been an uptick, whether it's pressure to be on call 24/7 or having to do more with less. Job burnout has become a troubling issue in the 21st century workplace. and this was happening before COVID-19 upended our lives. Now, for those lucky enough to still have a job, there are even more stressors. And when this adds up and is not resolved, you're vulnerable to job burnout. This is defined as chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It includes exhaustion, negativity or cynicism, and a sense of professional ineffectiveness. And it costs employers up to $190 billion per year in healthcare spending to deal with issues ranging from anxiety to high blood pressure to substance abuse. While it may seem counterintuitive, the pandemic crisis may be the best time to plan for real workplace change.
It's really possible under these kind of circumstances, I think, where the ground is not as stable anymore, to think out of the box.
Dr. Christina Maslach pioneered the study of burnout, and in the early 80s, she developed the Maslach Burnout Inventory, which has since become the gold standard in measuring this phenomenon. Her research has identified at least 6 potential problem areas between the job and the person. Chances are you've dealt with at least one of these, if not more. So Maslach suggests employers think of this time as a reset and try to flip these problem areas. For instance, with demand overload, workers often suffer in silence, usually out of fear of saying no, and then the demands escalate. That can cause a whole host of mental and physical health issues. Instead, employers can build an environment of trust and reassurance just by asking, "What can I do to help?" and engage with employees to get their input to build a better framework.
So when there are these imbalances in any of those 6 areas, you're going to see people more at risk for experiencing not just the exhaustion, the cynicism, the lack of competence and efficacy. Whereas if it's working better, then there's going to be more engagement.
To successfully make these changes, Maslach says employers should keep in mind what she calls the 3 C's.
One is collaboration, really bringing everybody in together. The second one is to customize, and in other words, to really adapt and not be locked into a particular solution, but find out what works best for us. And then 3 is commit. And commit means that you are going to stick with it, and if it doesn't work as well at first, you're going to keep trying until we get to a place where it's actually helping.
So while the pandemic is unsettling and scary, the silver lining is we've already shown that we can adjust to big changes. Why not use this opportunity to try to reverse the causes of job burnout and rethink how we work moving forward?
So that age-old adage is still very much relevant for us. What can I do to help you? That remains still a powerful statement, something we need to be reminded every day. Now, in terms of strategic priorities when we adopt to change, one of the things it would be helpful for us to remember, even if we make the transformation, most of the skill set that we're adopting have a shelf life of 1 to 2 years. So in the mindset, it's very important for the managers and employees. You have to constantly reinvent change in these changing times, which also has an implication for the organization positioning strategy, because even as think tanks or any knowledge outfit has to quickly adapt to the changing realities unleashed by this whole deluge of information flow, digital transformation, so on and so forth. Let's see what a popular company, IKEA, is doing to customize its business strategy to respond to the changing times.
Hey, IKEA would like everyone to know about Place, our new augmented reality app. Built on Apple's new AR kit, you can easily place true to scale 3D models of IKEA furniture in your place. Scan, browse, select, move, and place. So that could mean less of this. And less of this. And probably more of this. We want to make it easier for people everywhere to imagine a better place. Share this place and this place. Try place in your place.
So we're nearing the end. How to adapt to new changes? As I mentioned, one of the big challenges is cybersecurity. Whether you're FBI, which is facing 4 times more complaints than it used to do pre-COVID days, to all the businesses, which a significant portion have faced some kind of cyber attack or not, most of the managers have been complaining of the security breaches they've been having, particularly with their employees using personal devices. So that makes this discourse debate all the more relevant. Future of work, what is the way forward?
Automation is coming for your job. At least that's the fear among many workers. From burger flipping bots to car building robots, not to mention high-powered software taking on more and more administrative tasks, it seems like hundreds of skills are rapidly becoming obsolete in the US economy. A McKinsey study found that AI and deep learning could add as much as $3.5 trillion to $5.8 trillion in annual value to companies.
80% or more of the jobs that make $20 an hour or less are at least potentially subject to automation.
The economic shock of the pandemic hasn't helped. Human workers are vulnerable to diseases that robots aren't, making it much easier and now cheaper to have a robot on staff that doesn't require healthcare.
Businesses are kind of looking and seeing that humans can get sick from COVID, but machines can't.
You can eliminate the healthcare costs, the labor and wage tag that comes along with those folks, and particularly in services. That's a big competitive advantage.
Automation was progressing before the pandemic hit, but the sudden financial pressure that businesses in the US encountered created the perfect storm to turn to automation. In previous recessions, enterprises looking to streamline their business practices turned to automation, and in some cases, the recession simply sped up what was already a long-desired change.
The conventional wisdom about the pandemic is that it has greatly accelerated all kinds of trends. AI, artificial intelligence, robotics and things like that, the movement toward those is certainly going to be accelerated post-pandemic for a simple reason. Robots don't get sick.
The clock can't be turned back on technological advancement. AI research is steadily increasing, and U.S. investment ranged between $15 billion to $23 billion in 2016 alone.
In the long run, better productivity leads to more economic growth, leads to higher wages for everybody. So there's really no doubt in the long run, automation, the story of it for the past 300 years has been a happy one. In the short run, for workers who are displaced, we generally don't see wages recover, certainly not quickly. We see more effects transmitted to their families as well, more problems finishing school or behavioral issues.
According to a Deloitte study, 50% of all jobs are potentially open to automation in the coming decades. And according to McKinsey, 400 million workers could be replaced by automation by 2030, which is about 15% of the global workforce. Automation isn't all doom and gloom. Some are hopeful that if automation takes over lower-skilled tasks, it could open up opportunities for fewer work hours and more free time that could be focused on creative pursuits that could actually result in even more economic growth.
So, what's the way forward? More and more independence in location, more adaptation to new realities, more improved knowledge sharing, more expansion of virtual workspace, then to take sustainable measures so we can live both COVID and post-COVID scenarios, and of course to exploit the competitive advantage which I have mentioned during the presentation, and increase collaboration, and last but not the least, to make the operations lean, efficient, mean as we move forward. This is a transformation which will shape the work landscape as never before. But we human beings have done it in the past, we'll do it this time, and at the end we shall prevail and hope shall live the fears and doubts. With that positive note, thanks for joining me. I wish you all the best, and I wish you all join me in overcoming this period of pandemic so that we can look back sometime and say with a big smile, we did it in spite and despite everything. Thank you.